historian to the witness. Dr. Girma Abebe was born and raised in Bulga, Ethiopia, where as a child he witnessed the village and the village church, the Holy Church, and the grandparents' house burned to ashes by fascist Graziani soldiers. He joined the University of London in 1950, received a master's degree from the City University of New York, CUNY, and later a doctorate degree from the University of New York. He joined later on the Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and served in the Department of the United Nations for 5 years. He was then posted at the Ethiopian Embassy in Rome and later at the Permanent Mission of Ethiopia to the United Nations with the rank of consul for about 10 years. He was the consul of Ethiopia in New York, and then he transferred to the United Nations Secretariat, where he served in the Department of Political Affairs and Decolonization as a political and senior political affairs officer for some 22 years. In that capacity, he accompanied several UN missions to Africa and the Pacific region in particular.
May I first say that it would not be easy for me to address a well-informed group, especially when the subject is Hitler, Mussolini, and Graziani. I am grateful for your patience anyway. The monumental works of Shakespeare in Hamlet describe for us the most awful activities by some like Mussolini, the fascist head of government of Italy, and Rodolfo Graziani, the fascist governor of Italian colonies in East Africa. He said, murders most foul, as in the best it is, but this most foul, strange and unnatural. That's what Shakespeare said. And an American correspondent in 1935 wrote, a free hand in Ethiopia, granted to Italy by France and Britain, is of the greatest and most decisive significance. The entrance to the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, is guarded by British and French imperialism. The other end is controlled by the guns of the British slaveholders by means of Aden British Naval and War Base. Ethiopia, furthermore, is completely surrounded by Italian, French and British colonies, so that she is entirely ringed around by precisely those nations who guard her every means of growth and egress. That's what the writer said. He was absolutely right. Ethiopia was then in desperate situation. Its membership to the League of Nations guaranteed effective military, naval, or air force against the members that violated the covenants of the League or to drain to save. The promised crippling sanctions against a state in violation of the covenant never came close to a serious implementation. Thus, the Italian offensive went rapidly ahead. The fascist soldiers had at their disposal all the forces of modern warfare, mechanized army, air power, poison gas. Ethiopians as a whole, nevertheless, fought profoundly hard. And although the fascist military soldiers used chemical weapons and poison gas. Regardless, the Ethiopians made the attacker life hell. On 5 May 1936, the aggressors entered Addis Ababa, and on 9 May 1936, Ethiopia had illegally been proclaimed part of a new Italian empire. In his brilliant book, The Coming of the Italian-Ethiopian War, George Baer sufficiently and succinctly put the matter on the table when he said, the League of Nations had not kept the peace, had not protected one of its members, had not deterred or punished an aggressor, and by its failures at the time of the Italian-Ethiopian War, the League, as a political institution, was humiliated and doomed. The weakness of the League of Nations was clearly shown in the case of fascist adventures in Ethiopia, and the glaringly absurd position of some of its members was amply demonstrated when they encouraged Mussolini's mysterious behavior in 1935 as the aggressor against that ancient land. All this is well documented in encyclopedia, chronicles, annals, memoirs, and in historical narratives. I was born and raised in Bulga, Ethiopia, one among countless regions that resisted fascist Italy's attempt to enslave Ethiopians. Torture, murder, killings, and the abuse of human rights fulfilled Graziani's specifications. This was the heart of the matter. His obedient soldiers roamed the streets and explored each corner of Ethiopian cities and towns, villages and neighborhoods for victims. I saw as a child from a nearby mountain shelter our historic village church, Burka Tekla Haymanot, and our grandparents' home burned to ashes by fascist soldiers. The world would well remember the terrible massacre and senseless destruction of our people and of our resources, particularly on February 19, 1937. This is what happened. On February 19, 1937, and suddenly bombs were thrown towards the tables in Addis Ababa, where Rodolfo Graziani, having invited at his quarters individuals consisting of invalids, the aged, women and children, for minor donations, was sitting with his fascist entourage. When the Ethiopian heroes courageously threw bombs at Graziani, the viceroy went hiding under the table while his fascist officers had either flung themselves to the ground or run away in all directions. Graziani was severely wounded, and so were many of his lieutenants. Then the shooting began by Italian fascist guards, and in only a few minutes there were more than 300 Ethiopians dead around the viceroy's quarter alone. The general massacre was particularly senseless and uncivilized. The victims included of individuals, the aged, women and children, who had been assembled on Graziani's invitation for minor donations. It is estimated that over 3,000 innocent Ethiopians were massacred. The massacre at Debre Libanos, the most respected religious center outside Addis Ababa, was the most brutal and hideous. Fascist leaders heard rumors that the great church sheltered some of those who attempted the assassination of Graziani. They believed that 1,000 monks had been party to a secret plot, and all in all, it is estimated that well over 2,000 Ethiopians were murdered in the massacre at Debre Libanos, the most respected church of Ethiopia. Murder, torture, and execution continued for all 5 years. That was the duration of Italian or partial occupation of Ethiopia. Reporters have given provisional minimum estimates of the slaughter of Ethiopians as follows. Fighters for freedom, men, women, and children, including the elderly, mostly civilians killed by fascist soldiers, total some 756,800. Destruction of church equal, they said, about 3,000. And houses burned and destroyed numbered 525,000. Only few in today's Italy want to forget the activities of Muslim and Graziani during the Ethiopian-Italian War in the 1930s. And they refuse to express regret when confronted with facts covering that brutal period. Ethiopians make a strong plea to those few Italian fascists to bury in deep ground the cause of hatred. After all, Emperor Haile Selassie had once sincerely remarked, we have always distinguished between fascism and the Italian people. We have always distinguished between fascism and the Italian people. He later added, there are no obstacles standing in the way of true understanding and a fruitful collaboration between our two countries. Ethiopians share his firm stand on the Italian-Ethiopian relations. After all, the fascist regime had subjected its own people to torture, maltreatment, and exiled those who resented its policies. I have close Italian friends in Italy and here in America, and once I discreetly asked one Italian friend of mine of what he thought about Benito Mussolini and Rodolfo Graziani. He answered instantly, l'uno è diavolo, l'altro cattivo. One is a devil, the other an evil. We also often joked with him, saying, vedi Napoli e poi mori. See Napoli and then die. Paradoxically, Napoli was a major port where Mussolini loaded his fascist soldiers on military vessels with chemical weapons, poison gas, and other awful war materials destined to Ethiopia for brutal activities. Bishops and priests associated with the Vatican blessed the adventurous soldiers on board the ships. Some even wished them good luck and donated them their golden crosses and valuables to flatter Mussolini in the hope of receiving ungodly rewards from him. In December 1937, the fascists in Rome, led by Mussolini, concluded that Graziani was an embarrassment to the regime. He had lacked fascist wisdom for systematic torture, murder, and execution. He was ordered to pack up and return to Rome. Another fascist, Duke of Austria, replaced him. We are now on the move at good speed towards the ultimate goal of open, just, and honorable relations and lasting friendship. But the erection of a monument to a well-known war criminal, Graziani, at a suburb near Rome, is a devastating issue that all should condemn and reject. It is a matter of serious concern to all in the world. We present this urgent appeal to the government of Italy and its people to take action on priority basis and remove the monument to Graziani from Affile, a place close to Rome, and to issue public order never again to indulge in future years in activities that become cruel reminders of wartime activities. Equally, we should communicate our deep concern and bring the matter to the attention of the current President of the United Nations and the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, the presiding head of state of the African Union, the President of the European Parliament, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and above all, to His Holiness Pope Benedict XVI. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, but most important, I respectfully express my sincere thanks to Mr. Kidane Alamayo, Mr. Nicola De Marco, Mr. Andrea Fiano, and Mr. Alessandro Casini, and their colleagues for organizing today's event on Graziani's monument. I thank you all for listening to me. Thank you.
Touching words, we continue with testimonies and oral history but in a different form. Yemane Demissie teaches writing, film history and criticism in the undergraduate department of film and television at NYU T School of the Arts. He is an award-winning independent filmmaker who has received numerous awards for his work, including the John Simon Guggenheim Fellowship, the Walter Masley Award for Best Documentary, the Locarno Film Festival Production Grant, and so on, many others. His films include 2 narrative features, Tumult and Dead Weight, and a documentary, Twilight Revelations, episodes in the life and times of Emperor Haile Selassie. Currently, Yemane is producing The Quantum Leapers, Ethiopia 1930-1975, a 6-part documentary series focusing on Ethiopian social, artistic, intellectual, political, and cultural history during the Emperor Selassie era. He's also developing And Then the Rain Returned, a narrative feature film set in 1918 Spanish influenza pandemic, a worldwide catastrophe in which over 50 million people lost their lives.